Yeah, so Brian here. Just came back home from TEDx, Hague Live. TED, as you might, we're just gonna go do a quick review. TED is a abbreviation for Technology, Entertainment and Design. It brings together some of the greatest thinkers in those areas and just explaining what's kind of cutting edge and great ideas. The taglines, ideas worth sharing. So we were today it was a simulcast from TED Global in Edinburgh, and the local independently organized event was doing a simulcast and also had some live speakers of their own, which was it was fun to be a part of. There were 200 people that applied and 150 people that got selected. And I'm just going to do a kind of recap of the day while it's still fresh in my mind and my book as well. The first talk was a local person, and I was actually very pleased with that. I think it was one of the best talks. She was talking about urban farming, which is a subject I think is quite interesting. Because it involves so many things. We talked about natural cycles and the 3 P's: people, planet, and profit. And these things have to be in balance. And she explained how she got really involved in actually getting a garden starting up in the middle of the city. And explain some of the key characters. And I'm gonna study. There's a guy called No Impact Guy who lived in New York City and went like kind of off the grid. Not off that grid. No, that's a whole other concept. He just went. He tried to live as sustainable as possible. So I want to check that guy out and just basically urban farming. So it was a very inspiring talk. Hope to see that soon on the internet. And then we also talked about basically how we're actually operating in the edge of chaos. Everything is life is such an interesting balance of things. That's one of the talks from TED Global itself. And it was it really was interesting to see the tie-in between the live speakers and the simulcast. And it was fun to see it go back and forth between that. And I think the two, I'm just going to talk about, because it would just take too long to talk about all the things that I thought were interesting. But, so it was the first talk, and then there was a talk about trial and error. And I'm going to be reading a book called Adapt by Tim Harford. Yeah? And he talks about how everybody has this GOMP complex. Like how we don't kind of admit that we don't have all the information, but we're still really ready to make our decision infinite. Like this is the way to deal with things. And I really resonate with that. I think it's it's a very dangerous way of being stuck. You know that you know a lot of stuff, but you still don't realize there's so much things that you're missing. So that talk, and also just inspired me to actually start doing more in business, because they talked about, for instance, how Unilever had created a product by trial and error instead of just having one genius design the product. And I think that's kind of inspiring me to, instead of finding the perfect business model, which is kind of what I've been doing right now in the last couple of weeks, is to just start and find it through that. And that actually ties in with another talk. There was a woman from the World Food Program that talked about how there are more people that die from hunger than from like AIDS, tuberculosis, and those diseases. But the problem and the difference is that we know how to treat hunger with food, but we don't know how to treat like some other diseases. We have already a cure per se. It's food, and there is enough food in the world. This distribution that is the issue. And for instance, they talked about things like school feeding. I guess you have, if you give kids like one meal at school, that increases their enrollment by like drastically, and especially with girls, because otherwise they would have to be on the street begging or cultivating the land as well. But so as soon as you give them food at school, it really drastically changes the way they attend school. And I thought it was also interesting. Of course, I read it before in the book, like Rich Christians in the Age of Poverty, I think, talks about how the brain, if it doesn't get nutrition when you're young, how it just doesn't develop. And of course, if you don't have a developed brain, how are you ever going to get out of poverty? So it is extremely important to feed these people if we're ever going to expect them to have a fighting chance. And they also talked about a very interesting point that the investment of feeding people, creating the structure of feeding people, the dividends or the interest really that it creates in society, it's like we talked about. I think we remember the number was like 10 billion US dollars to create an infrastructure to feed, I think, all the people in the world, on average, and then it will save the cost of 270 billion is lost with poverty, fights, and so on. The crimes that are just problems that are related to not having enough food. Like I said, I do not have enough time to talk about all the things, but of course I just recommend anybody that hasn't been to a TEDx event to check out their local community. You can just Google TEDx and then your city or a city, major city around you. Also, if you've been to a TEDx event, please feel free to contact me and comment below. And yeah, I really like. For me, I can't say I'm a TEDster because to be a TEDster, I think you have to actually have been to a TED event, which is like in California or a TED Global. But in the way I resonate with the idea that really ideas are extremely powerful, and you can never ever like. Actually, you hear me rambling, but there is a point I think one of the person I met at this event made. I think it's quite interesting as well. It's so. I was just about to make the point that information is so valuable and so on, but I think also it's information and inspiration that lead to action that kind of are where I think is the most powerful point. But I think that that's kind of the whole deal about TED. It gives you information that kind of forces you to take action. For me, the combination of the trial and error lecture with the World Food Program lecture is really inspiring me to actually create some kind of either for-profit or like not-for-profit company that is revolving around feeding people. So now it's a combination, and also the people that you meet there. So okay, I'm just issuing a challenge to myself, and a public statement on the internet. I want to at least investigate how I can contribute in that way. I know that I'm already contributing with the Groasis project. I think that's actually one of the best ways ever, the sustainable way to help people create, have food in their, cultivate their own food. And I'll just link to a video, you just here below. Check that out. That's a great way for people to combat hunger. But I also want to just like do something in my own hands. Actually, I'm just realizing that the Yes We plant is actually a powerful way of doing it. You know what? Thank you. Like me thinking about it, helps me realize how powerful the Yes We Plant program actually is. Because it is really one of the best way to do it. I can try all my life, create a new idea. Yeah. Thank you, Video Blog, for helping me realize it, how really important it is. Anyway, please feel free to comment if you have any. For instance, if anybody was at the event, what was your favorite talk? And also subscribe. That encourages me to make more of these videos. And I'll see you around.